was thought to be so intimidating, Army had to do something, so they created a training film to bust the myth of the MG42.
The German 42 on the tripod. The German gun is good, but ours is better. When you know the drawbacks of these enemy weapons and realize that their bark is worse than their bite, you aren't afraid of some unknown thing.
But no training films could really diminish the effectiveness of the enemy weapon.
The Germans orientated most of their tactics around the machine gun because it was a battle-winning weapon.
To portray a realistic threat for the American tankers, instructors taught the film's cast members the historically accurate tactics of the Waffen-SS.
MG gunner, put the weapon into your shoulder, drop the weapon, and apply the safety catch. Alles klar? Alles klar. Fertig! It wasn't easy to beat these people. If you replicate these people stupidly, you're not doing anyone any justice.
They're shooting those machine guns, and it's bouncing all around you.
Even to a tanker, safe behind a few inches of steel, the MG42 still made a nerve-wracking impact.
You feel it in your tank. It's not going through, but just hear that stuff hitting on the outside. You know, that shakes you up.
In the Columbia Pictures film Fury, 4 American M4 Sherman tanks pushed through the German countryside towards their next objective. And they rolled right into an ambush. They collided with their most feared adversary, the Panzerkampfwagen 6, better known as the Tiger.
It's kind of the monster in our movie, and it's a really important character in our movie.
This 56-ton beast started rolling off German assembly lines in 1942. It had a crew of 5, like the Sherman, but was nearly double the weight and size of its American counterpart. The Tiger's armor was 4 inches thick, an inch more than the Sherman. What the Tiger gained in protection, it sacrificed in speed. Its 700-horsepower Maybach gasoline engine gave it a top speed of just 23 miles per hour. Its real virtue was its gun, a massive 88mm cannon that could punch a hole through 4 inches of armor over a mile away.
We were no match for them throughout the whole war. We were outgunned and out-armored.
We knew that they were a bigger and better tank than we were. In fact, they were twice our size.
One German gunner bragged that he knocked off 5 Sherman tanks at one crossroad.
The Tiger's 88mm ammunition was nearly twice the size, with greater hitting power compared to the Sherman's 75mm ammo.
Our early 75mm guns simply couldn't penetrate the armor on the forward parts of that Tiger tank.
These tankers questioned why a newer weapon, a more up-to-date weapon, wasn't on their tank. That came up more than once. Why don't we have a better tank?
In the first months of 1945, the Army finally delivered an answer. A Sherman loaded with upgrades, the M4A3E8. It's the version featured as Fury.
The Fury is the last evolution of the Sherman. It's thicker armor, has a better engine, has a bigger high velocity gun. It has an entirely different suspension system.
The most welcome improvement in the new Shermans was that bigger gun, firing a more powerful 76mm shell.
It's a high velocity gun, which means it can go 3,000 feet a second. Now, the other one we had, the 75, had about 2,200 feet a second.
Could that increase of a few hundred feet per second in muzzle velocity level the playing field for the Sherman crews? Will a faster moving projectile punch a hole in the Tiger's thick hide? At a firing range outside Phoenix, Arizona, a restored World War II M18 Hellcat takes aim at a target 100 yards downrange. A steel plate, 4 inches thick, the same thickness as the Tiger's armor. The M18 is armed with a 76mm gun, the same type of gun found on Fury. Although the new gun fires ammunition only a millimeter bigger in diameter than the 75's gun, the 76 ammunition packs nearly twice the propellant. That moves the projectile at a much higher velocity. That means quicker hitting power. Punches right through 4 inches of steel. The new 76mm gun finally gave Sherman crews the muscle they had been lacking.
Now the Tiger's 88mm gun still had a greater range than the Sherman's gun, but if the Sherman could get in close and get off a shot at the right spot, the Sherman now had a fighting chance to knock out the Tiger.
Filming the clash between the two wartime rivals is expected to take a week, so the filmmakers built an accurate replica of a Tiger tank on top of a modern tracked vehicle, with running gear rugged enough to endure the rigorous shoot.
Our Tiger tank had a completely different wheel configuration to the real Tiger. So we put a blue skirt around the main body of our fabricated tank, and that would be for the special effects people to key off of and add the real Tiger tank tracks too.
Even without its proper computer-generated tracks, there is no mistaking the Tiger's intimidating presence.
This replica Tiger, it's working well. We've got it tracking from the end of the field out into the action area. It's doing its job, although this clay soil is clogging up and it's making it a little bit tougher, but the tracks are working.
During the war, American factories built nearly 50,000 M4s. Although the Germans fielded thousands of other types of tanks, they only made about 1,300 Tigers. That's a ratio of about 50 Shermans for every one Tiger.
Think about it, 1,300 Tigers, 50,000 Shermans. So you're going to flood the battlefield with Sherman tanks. It's always going to be 3, 4, 5 Shermans taking on that Tiger.
Simply throwing more Shermans into the fight and sacrificing more Sherman crews wasn't much of a strategy or much consolation for the men.
You end up with this situation that Sherman tanks are having to improvise. What is going to be our tactics when we meet enemy tanks? What's the tactics when we meet something bigger?
The Sherman is a bit faster than most German tanks, and the crews discovered that in tank versus tank warfare, speed is life.
They kept on the move all the time. Mobility is the only thing that really kept the Shermans alive.
Another trick up the sleeve of the Sherman was its reliable powered turret traverse mechanism. It could complete a 360-degree rotation in about 15 seconds.
Germans were handicapped because they couldn't turn their turret fast enough to get bead on the Sherman as long as it was not coming out and bit it off.
The Tiger had a powered turret as well, but it wasn't nearly as fast as the Shermans. In close quarter combat, those few seconds are the margin between life and death. The differences between these two armored foes, their agility and the speed at which they can rotate their turrets, are exactly what the filmmakers draw upon as they choreograph the clash. After the Tiger destroys one of the Shermans, the remaining M4s pull back to regroup. In a bold tactic described in veteran accounts, the Sherman's best chance was to charge their enemy. It's 3 little Davids versus 1 big Goliath. The nimble Shermans swarm the Tiger. The rivals jockey for a clear shot at each other. They push their tanks hard, racing to be the first to strike a fatal blow. Staging the battle took the better part of a week. The replica Tiger had done an effective job as a stand-in for the real thing. Now, for the first time in 70 years, the Shermans will come face to face with their true enemy, a Tiger tank, the only working Tiger tank left in the world.